Good. Good evening and welcome to the regular scheduled board meeting of North Central Texas College. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ensure that we have a quorum. I will call the roll. Mr. Grime, John Grime, please speak and say you're present. Mr. Ott.
Here.
Mrs. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Hayen.
Here.
Ms. Metzler's here. Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson might not have joined us yet. And then Ms. Sullivan.
Here.
All right. So we do have a quorum. So we can go ahead and move to the next item, which is the citizens communication, item number 3. Cindy, did we have anyone that reached out to us that would like to address the board?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next item on our report is the Chancellor's report. Dr. Wallace.
So as we're in our meeting today, I remind you that with technology, it helps if you're muted during other people's commentaries until you have questions. Also, you can use your space bar by holding it down to speak when you are able to do so. I go through this every time we have an online meeting, so we try to help people know that because it's easier to use the space bar sometimes. A few updates that I'd like to bring to the board this evening were related primarily to our reopening of our campuses post the first steps of COVID. Of course, we are not past that by any stretch of the imagination as far as working around that. There's a very exhausted list that's been provided by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board on how we are to reopen our colleges and universities in the state of Texas. We followed that list very explicitly and have been able to say that we can check mark each of those areas. That list includes everything from temperature checks at front door entrances to mask policies that the governor's mandated, all the way to our instructors will be asked to take attendance for the first time in many years as a requirement of the COVID pandemic, because we need to be able, in the event of a case, do tracking of where that person has been last time they've been in classes. And so we ran into that today, and Dr. King will be notifying our faculty that it's going to be important that we collect our data on attendance for this semester until further notice from the state. So all those things are going very well. We're meeting students where they need to be met. They can do a lot online. Let's face it, they're using a lot of those online resources. So we have students that are being registered online, advised, counseled online. But then we are open. We do have students coming to our campuses for face-to-face meetings. They check in the same way that all other students would through our QLIS program, which is an app that they can do to know what time they need to arrive and how early, and schedule those appointments. But we're very fortunate that we notice that most of our students are using that technology and are still pretty safely, to say, preferring the online model to registration right now. But we are open and can help students at each campus. You'll get an enrollment update a little later in the board meeting that will help you understand where we are in those areas, and be glad to answer any questions we have about those at that time. We're still working diligently. I have to say, one of the challenges that we're really having right now is with health sciences and being able to get back into clinical sites for our health science majors. With COVID still very active in Denton County and parts of our service areas, we're really struggling to just make sure we meet the protocols of not only ourselves and our accrediting bodies, but also our hospitals and clinics that we're serving. So we appreciate our clinical partners, and I want to publicly thank those places for the work that they do to help us educate future clinicians, and so we're very proud of that work. The Texas legislature is behind as far as when they traditionally would have met for interim charges, and the interim charges were just released last week, and we're working diligently to respond to those best we can. There's about 5 pages of the small spreadsheet that we've put together through TAC. But just to let you know, that is just now opening up for us to be able to respond. Now, in the pre-COVID, we would have gone to the Capitol, visited with folks, and testified by invites, et cetera. Now it's going to be written responses, but in meetings such as what we're having today, there's just not the opportunity for people to go to the Capitol. The Capitol's fairly well closed down to the public. And so we're working diligently to respond to those where we need to. We appreciate our legislators who serve on key committees, and we're working with them. And so that's been very promising. The academic year will start technically with the first day of class on Monday, and we fully expect next week to be very different than the first week of school has ever been in history. We are prepared for that, and we kind of are calling it our week of transition, our week to get to know each other, both on the side of students, giving them a lot of grace and patience, but also having patience with our faculty and staff as they navigate new ways of teaching and new mechanisms too. So we're looking forward to getting back to school, but we also know that next week may bring some new challenges we've never experienced before. But we are going to be flexible and move as quickly as we can to make sure our students are met where they need to, while keeping our staff and our faculty as safe as we can as well. I'm open to questions. If you don't have any, I understand that there's a lot going to be covered through this evening's meeting as far as updates to enrollment. The questions may come around that, but we're trying to answer as many questions as we can. We have a front page of our website. There's a link to COVID-19 and all the responses for that, and questions that people, students, community have. That's a good link to just check on and be able to read those things there. So we've got a lot coming down the next few weeks, and we look forward to getting students back and hopefully returning someday to more normalcy than we're experiencing now. I don't know what that normal is going to look like in the future, but hopefully a little more of our comfort level of normal than in the past few months. So any questions I can answer? So this week is also our normal time. We would have brought faculty and staff together in one place and had a great in-service meeting. We're not able to do that. So what we're doing is I'm conducting 4 internal town hall meetings with our staff and faculty, where they have Q&A opportunities to ask of me what they may want to ask, and see what kind of concerns they may have, or just simply logistical kind of questions. So we're doing those instead of a traditional one-stop meeting, and a lot of other subgroups are meeting. Our faculty have really done a great job under their leadership. Everyone has professional development opportunities that the faculty themselves wrote and created. And so we really appreciate Professor Jones in our history department and government department for putting that together with all of our other faculty and staff. And so excited to see all that, and look forward to this week. And we're doing things, but they're just online and virtually rather than larger group settings. But we are continuing our businesses and keeping true to our mission. I would like to let the record show that Mr. Grime has been able to join us, Madam Chairman, in case you cannot see that. So we do have Mr. Grime as well, Regent Grime. But any questions? If not, that's my report for now, and we have a lot to discuss with you, and later in the agenda, you'll hear some more from me. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wallace. Wanted to go ahead and go to the next item on the agenda, which is the committee reports. And the first committee report is the executive committee. And I will tell you that the executive committee did meet. Much of what Dr. Wallace just reported was part of that summation that he gave regarding COVID-19. Dr. Wallace reviewed the highlights of the 2020-2021 budget, and that we'll be talking about this year, tonight actually, to vote on. And then the executive committee also reviewed the policy regarding a possible reduction in force. And then he also reported on the Texas legislature interim charges charges that we were expecting to hear about. So that was our report. The next item or report from the Regents would be the finance report. Christy?
Yes, the finance can. Agenda you visit again. We did calculate, and the administration and the finance committee support the no new tax rate. We just combining the two board reserves accounts into one, and you will notice that they appear that way on your July financials. Next month, we will have an action item to make that official. And then in a few minutes, Dr. Miller will be discussing the CPA revenue bonds. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. We discussed the monthly financial reports, and that was the
Thank you for that report. Mr. Grime, do you have a building committee report?
The building committee, Madam Chairman, did not meet this month, and so he's having some internet connection problems, but they did not meet.
Okay, I'm watching the weather because if that happens to me, we're going to all be in trouble. So, all right. So we'll just move on to Student Success Committee. I don't know if Mr. Henderson joined the meeting. He did not. They did not meet.
They did not.
Thank you very much. The next item is the financial report. Dr. Miller will review the July 2020 financials.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You'll find the regular monthly financials there in your board materials. And as Ms. Morris mentioned earlier, we had significant discussion about the board reserves accounts, the two reserve accounts that we have had. And after checking with our auditor, Ms. Judy Smith, we plan to proceed in combining those two. We didn't get the agenda item on tonight, but the next time we meet, we want to present that to you for you to act upon. But if you'll notice under the statement of funds, which I believe should be the first financial report there, you'll notice for the first time the board reserves, instead of breaking them out as discretionary board reserves and as rainy day fund, they basically now are lumped together as one. But for information purposes, we hope in the future to give this information to you in the form of short-term reserves and long-term reserves. But there's really no true difference between the funds in those two accounts. They are board reserves. The board has full control over them. So we thought it would be best to put them together in this way. As you see, there's $13 million there. And under the old reporting system, it was about half discretionary and half rainy day funds. But now, from now on out, we want to look at them in total. The other report that I want to call to your attention, I believe, is the next page, the budget comparison. There might be some questions that you might have here. I know I had some questions, and I had to do some research to find out why, in particular, down on the expense side, it looked like general administration and auxiliary expenses were running so far ahead of last year. And when I did my research, I found out that both of these accounts, these balances have to do with the almost $4 million of federal CARES Act funding that we received just in the last few months. And that's showing up on the revenue as federal funds, which ordinarily would be down because Pell Grants were down this year. But no, it's up over last year. And then the disbursement of those funds, a lot of it going directly to students, just from our accounting practices, it has fallen into these expense accounts labeled as general administration and auxiliary. But when we get to our year end and working with our auditors, those will be broken out into the right locations. So I just if those numbers down there were causing anyone any concern, I wanted to be able to respond to that for you. But it has to do with our federal CARES Act dollars. And I would report to you that I don't know if there's a school in the state that got their share of the student CARES Act money dispersed any quicker than we did. But we have totally closed out the 1.9 million that we received for students has all left our hands and is in the hands of students. And we had that completed before the end of July. So I was real proud of our financial aid department, our foundation. There were numerous departments that played a role in that, but we felt like that was the desire of the federal government in the first place for giving that money to us, was to get it in the hands of students. And I'm proud that we were able to do that successfully, very efficiently. I'm sure it's been a big help for our students. Does anyone have any specific questions about anything in the financials?
Just to add a thing or two here, Dr. Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've also got on our front page via a requirement on the web page, if anyone wants to see those CARES Act kind of distribution things, there's some reports that are available that we have had to make public. Those are out there that you can find on the search engine through the college website to see how we spent those dollars, et cetera. So those are there and part of the reporting that we've been asked by the federal government to do. And so I too applaud our finance side of the house, our foundation, because that was a big lift with very short time frame, and they did a phenomenal job. I'd like to mention the board reserve combination that will come to you next month. I do think this is a very wise decision for us to combine these. I like the fact that you're able to then, as a board, see short and long-term investment a little more clearly. And also, I would remind you that there is no standard, there is no recommended basis for what boards of regents at community colleges in Texas are required to keep reserves. How much? There's not a standard for any of that. Any reserve is there for in our case, was created for state cuts in funding that are unplanned. That's what those monies are for. And so I appreciate the board looking at that and considering that this month for action next month, hopefully, to put those together and be able to utilize those for our needs as they come up. But I just wanted to remind you that there's not a set. That question comes up a lot. What's the norm? There is no norm. Some of our community colleges have over a year's worth of operations in their reserves, because they have such large tax base and large service areas. Others have very little, if any, reserves. So there is no standard in the state, and we've got a healthy amount, but you may even see us come in the near future to continue to add to that for times of distress like we've seen the last few months as well. But I appreciate that work.
Thank you for the report. Dr. Miller, are you finished?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, the next item would be the fall 2020 enrollment. Ms. Carroll?
Good evening. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you so much for allowing me to give an update in regard to where we are with fall 2020 enrollment. Currently, just before the meeting, I pulled enrollment numbers, and we're at 7,200 students. So big kudos to all of the NCTC team, primarily, advising, admissions, the support of faculty and staff, our testing center, who have been really trying to meet students where they are. I think it's been a team effort for the entire college to make this sort of lift happen. And just wanted to give that quick update in comparison to last year at this time. And it is the exact end of day comparison. On August 18th, we were at 8,899 students. So we're approximately 19% down currently. And this is compared to, again, the same time last year. After having dropped on Thursday of last week, 271 students for non-payment. And then in looking at contact hours, we're about 20.5% down compared to this time last year. As we've been looking at these numbers and trying to determine what has caused part of the decline, we know, being the fear of COVID-19 and some of the other, things that have caused us to close. We also have been looking closely at application counts as well. As a state across the board, we have had a reduction in the number of applications and it's been consistently right at 17% down of applications for admissions that we've received during this time. And in looking at the data just for this current fall term, we do have the majority. There's, almost 80% of our students are enrolling in online courses, and then about 20% of our total enrollment are dual credit students in the high schools. So, and that number has fluctuated a bit as well. So we're going to continue to register the entire week of this week, including Saturday from 9 to 1, and then also the whole first week of class. As Dr. Wallace mentioned, we're going to have a week of compassion as we normally do, but we're really going to try and make sure students know that we're here for them. We've created a safe environment, and it is one where we want them to be successful. And I feel like that's what we've been trying to do the whole time, since March, since we've been closed down, or since we've been working virtually, because we have been diligently working virtually. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're open, but we are still working through QLIS and trying to meet students if they don't feel comfortable coming to campus to actually meet in this platform, online, over the phone, whatever the student feels most comfortable in meeting. And that even includes our testing services, which has been very different in years past. Does anyone have any questions, or maybe I've overlooked something?
Questions? All right. Thank you very much for that report. And then our next report will be the Achieving the Dream virtual visit. And Ms. Carroll, you're up again.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And as we've been closed or working virtually, I keep saying closed, we have been working virtually during this time. We also had an opportunity to meet with our Achieving the Dream coaches on July 21st and 22nd. And various members of the college met with our Achieving the Dream coaches, our leadership and data coach, representatives from the data and core team, our employee resource groups, our division of EDI, faculty senate, and then also our dean's leadership and enrollment management, as well as our executive council, had an opportunity to meet one-on-one with our coaches. They did give us some great feedback as far as us NCTC continuing to, work through, doing diligent equity work and focusing on two of our goals of student engagement and achievement of underrepresented students, as well as, trying to change some of the dynamic toward equitable practices. And they did see that in some of the work of some of the groups that have formed during this time. And primarily those were those of our employee resource groups. They did mention how NCTC did respond after the death of George Floyd, and the statements and the continued equity work that we did and are continuously doing. So as a result of that feedback, part of what, with Dr. Wallace's permission, in September, we'll be bringing the employee resource groups, presenting those formally to the Board of Regents, including their bylaws and other work, to be similar and to be approved by our board, to be part of our culture, similar to that of our Senate, faculty Senate, and then NCTC support staff associations. And then we'll use that same sort of practice in the future. But the coaches really did give kudos to NCTC. They did challenge us to make sure that we captured the lessons of spring 2020, so we could continue some of that work, to really continue the enthusiasm that they heard from all groups, including faculty, of where we are with the equity work that we're doing, and really harnessing on, some of the things that we've changed during this time, because it has, and I feel like Dr. Wallace has mentioned this, has caused us to really, push forward with some things we had talked about, maybe taking a little bit more time to implement. It's made us implement some of the things so we can meet students where they were or where they are. And then toward the end of September, September 1st, we will be submitting our this year's reflection of what we've done in 2020, 1920, as well as our strategic plan that Dr. Wallace will present shortly. But I do want to thank the board for giving us an opportunity to be a part of achieving the dream. I think it's helped us really grow as a college even during this time, because it's made us reflect of who we are and what we want to change to embrace equity and diversity and inclusion in all that we're doing. Does anyone have any questions?
Our coaches were very complimentary of the work that Melinda's done and our team, so I would also add that to her and her work. Very thrilled by what work we've done. They were surprised at the amount of work we had done, considering COVID was in the middle of it, that we were able to continue that. And I appreciate too the board wanting us to continue to do that work, because that was mentioned during the budget workshop that you all did not want that work to go undone or incompleted. And so very excited about that, and we appreciate it so much.
Okay, Debbie, I'm going to take the consent agenda item next, because I don't want to lose out on an internet connection. And if the weather does get bad, I will definitely lose you. So I would like to move to item number 7, which is the consent agenda items. Is there any agenda item of that consent section that needs to be removed to discuss independently? Any board member? Doesn't appear that we do. So we'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I move we accept or approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Hagan. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Ott. Okay, I'm going to call the roll for the vote. Please identify by saying aye or nay. Mr. Graham?
Aye.
Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Ms. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is aye. Did Mr. Henderson join? No. Okay. And Mrs. Sullivan?
Aye.
The motion passed. Thank you very much. Let's go on down to the discussion and possible action, and Debbie, we'll come back to you, I promise. The next agenda item then would be the NCTC strategic plan presented by Dr. Wallace.
You've had time in your agenda materials to review that. If you notice, it is considered a draft until the board passes that this evening, if you choose to do so. We're very happy with what we've been able to create as really a 3-year process. This has been a long process, and I think sometimes our faculty and staff didn't realize they were involved in this process, and they were. This goes back to even the work we did with capacity cafes, with our Perkins work we did with our communities and business leaders and industry, our work we did with faculty. We had student support groups. And so we're very, very, very proud of the results of this. You will notice a few little minor changes to some of the things, and then you may notice some major changes. I do need to probably point out for you for sure that we have a shift in some of what is considered our value statements. Those have changed a little bit in the last 5 years, but those are reflected in that report, as you see. They include things that we've even heard some of you as board members input. A culture of caring is in there. Those things about integrity still with our classrooms and with our work is still in there. So we're very proud of this. The draft is required until the board passes this, but very, very pleased with our mission statements pretty much maintaining its same, and I'm having technology issues, but anyway, our mission statement's pretty much the same. Our value statements have had some shifting, and then you will see the matrix of which we will be evaluating our achievement of these goals over the next 5 years under each section. There is a working document that's far more complex than what you are seeing, which gives us the details of how we measure student completion, student outcomes by percentages, what work we use off SESI and off our own internal review of data. But we're very proud of this. I'm open to any questions, but it's been a real effort on everyone's part. I'm very pleased with how much work went into that. We have marketing that are working really tirelessly to help us ultimately put this in something that's really attractive too, that looks good for our public face for everyone to see, that we'll take this and do that. But the main pieces I think you need to understand is quality education, diversity, innovation, caring, and excellence. Those are our big new value statements, all through the equity lens, and then measurable outcomes. Every department has an outcome in which they work. For example, the work of the foundation in external affairs is very much in the institutional distinction category and institutional excellence. So we offer this to you and recommend as an administration, with your approval, the 2020-2025 strategic plan. Also, Madam Chairman, this also will be a requirement that you all visit. You have to every year visit the mission. This same adoption, if you choose to, covers us from an accreditation standpoint as a review of the mission. So we do need everyone to make sure they're comfortable still with the mission statement that's in this document. But we would move for approval with your permission.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the strategic plan as presented?
Will we be receiving updates on the benchmarks periodically?
Yes, ma'am. What we plan to do is probably quarterly or for sure yearly, since it's a 5-year program, but probably each long semester we'll give you a strategic planning update and where we are on each of the matrix and each of the indicators. Yes, we will.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to.
I move we adopt the 2025 NCTC strategic plan.
We have a motion by Mr. Hand. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Ms. Sullivan. We have additional discussion? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Mr. Grime?
Aye.
Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Ms. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Hand?
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is aye. Ms. Sullivan?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consideration for approving the memorandum of understanding between the college and our foundation. Debbie?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. We do have a copy, or y'all did receive a copy of this MOU. As you know, we've had an MOU between the college and the foundation for a long time. However, in looking at preparing for our SACS accreditation, we realized there were some components that we needed to add to make sure that we were covered with some of the new principles and regulations within our accreditation. So those of you that are on the foundation board has seen this memorandum at our last July meeting. However, between now and then, we realized that we needed to make some changes. And so we have added some sections related to who would be liable given the college or the foundation. And then also in our SACS requirements, it talks about to ensure that the chief executive officer has ultimate responsibility and control over the institution's fundraising activities. So we have made some changes to this MOU. We've also sent it to our legal to get legal advice on it. And so what we presented to you tonight is the kind of the common what the attorneys asked us to include from a liability perspective, as well as to make sure we had the proper controls. I have sent this to the executive committee of the foundation with these changes, and we will be reviewing this then at our October foundation board meeting for their approval. But would like to entertain if y'all have any questions for us on this MOU, and then at some point, if we are comfortable with approving this MOU.
Debbie, I do have a question or some input. Under the institution governance, and it indicates the 3 things that the Board of Regents is responsible for.
Okay.
I'd really like to see us add that as elected officials, we set the tax rate.
Okay.
That's not part of that document and is definitely one of the items that, as a regent, we're responsible for.
Okay.
I also feel like that SACS needs to understand that we're elected officials. Sometimes their governance is such a large span of community colleges. Some of those are appointed and some of those are elected, and they tend to forget about the selected folks.
Yes, that would not be a problem at all. We could add that as a fourth bullet on the MOU.
And Madam Chairman, what we can also do with your permit, if it could also help, is we can reference Texas Education Code Section 130.084, which is your legislative responsibilities as a governing board. We can reference that in that addendum as well. So, I mean, in that addition. So-
Okay, we can do that.
That was the only, because I did read it when you sent it over for the.
Yeah, it's long. All right. Any other questions or comments?
So we would need a motion to approve with the change that was recommended, if I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
The motion was
Second it.
made by Ms. Morris, and we have a second by Mr. Ott. We'll go ahead and call the vote. Mr. Grime,
Aye.
Mr. Ott,
Aye.
Ms. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Hand,
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is an aye, and Mrs. Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, the next item would be the consideration for approving the real property and tax resale deed for the property located in Graham, Texas. I believe that's Mr. Miller, Dr. Miller, sorry.
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. This is basically a housekeeping item. $500 sale going on over in Graham, Texas, and because we are a taxing entity, we have to sign off and approve. And the ISD there has done their part, and they have now forwarded to us asking for us to sign this document, but we need your approval before that signature can be completed.
Do we have a motion for approval?
We approve the sale of foreclosed properties located in Young County, Texas.
That was by Mr. Hand. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Morris. Okay, we'll go ahead and any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Mr. Grime,
Aye.
Mr. Ott,
Aye.
Ms. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Hand,
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is aye. Ms. Sullivan,
Aye.
motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of the prepayment of tuition revenue bonds issued in 2013. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. About 8 years ago, the board refinanced some improvements on the First State Bank Center for the Performing Arts here on the Gainesville campus and utilized tuition revenue bonds in the process. And we basically have two remaining annual payments there. And what we have proposed to the Finance Committee is we would like for the board to consider going ahead and prepaying. Prepaying is allowed on these tuition revenue bonds and pay them off early. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the interest rates on the existing bonds are around 3%, and we're getting less than 1% on our money ourselves right now. And probably more importantly, what drove this is you probably remember 2 months ago at the June meeting that we approached you and you approved what was essentially an internal grant to assist with some of our student success activities in the coming year, because we had a couple of federal grants that were going to expire and it was going to leave us in a lurch. Well, surprisingly to us, we found out just a couple of weeks ago that our TRIO grant has in fact been approved for another, is it 3 or 5 years? 5 years. So that eliminated a good chunk of the need for that grant that we asked you for two months ago. So what we are proposing is that we're asking you to please rescind that grant that you opposed to 2 months ago, and I believe that was for $750,000 from board reserves. And instead, we would prefer if that money were used to pay off these tuition revenue bonds. And from the sheet there on the agenda, you'll see that we're talking about there's about $820,000 worth of principal payments that would be due, and less than $10,000 in interest by the time we would pay these bonds off. So somewhere around $825,000 to $830,000, and then that frees up in the institution's budget next year's bond payments. In fact, it would free up the bond payments in the institutional budget for the next 2 years. But that's what we're coming forward asking for, and I have been in touch with the fiscal agent for these bonds to verify that yes, in fact, we can prepay them, and we can basically do it at any time. They did ask for several weeks' notice in advance, but sometimes these bonds you can only prepay on a maturity date or on one of the semi-annual note payments that are due. But no, they said we can do this at any time. So if the board so desires, and the administration is asking for your permission to actually do this, so we can move forward and be free from those bonds over and not have 2 years left to pay.
So, Madam Chairman, if I could, I appreciate Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller we're still relatively new to our bonds and things, even though he's been here a year. What we were trying to do is we are still very hopeful that the Title III grant will come through with an extension that will further reduce the institution's dollar liability for paying those staff positions too. I believe I'm correct, Debbie, in that. And so there's still hope that even further amounts of monies will come in through that. But with us getting the TRIO grant re-secured, and I have to give shouts out to Nancy Zamora and her team for that, because that is who did that and worked diligently. And we thought we had done too good a job, honestly, this year to get it again, and to get it was a real compliment to their work. But remember, you have to maintain in your reserves anyway a backup of one payment. So it's not like you're spending the full amount. So you've had that payment has been in there all the way to back up the bond payment. Now, if we take what we budgeted, instead the board uses reserves to pay it, we end up institutionalizing those positions. It's a win-win, we believe, for the board's uses of reserves, and it frees up budgetarily some money that will help us maintain some important staff positions we're doing our best to maintain. So we hope that makes sense. It's kind of complicated. It was a brainchild of a sleepless night, and it's my fault. But I think it makes a lot more sense than anything else might have for us to get that debt off the books. It would be paid for. That leaves us with only one tuition revenue bond, and that is Corinth, and it pays off in 2 years as well. And then we are out of the revenue bond payment business at this point. We have our leases, of course, for Flower Mound and Denton, but they don't go against debt ratios or any of those kinds of things. So we do recommend, with your permission, we would like to see this passed as presented. I do clarify that's the rescinding of the grant proposal from that previous board meeting, and instead paying the outstanding 2013 tuition revenue bonds for the FSB Center for the Performing Arts.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was going to read it. I move that the board approves rescinding the previously approved internal grant to the Student Success Center, and instead prepaying the outstanding 2013 tuition revenue bonds for the First State Bank Center for Performing Arts.
So we have a motion by Mr. Hand. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
A second by Mrs. Sullivan. Do we have any additional discussion? All right, we'll call the roll for the vote. Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Ott,
Aye.
Ms. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Hand,
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is aye, Ms. Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consideration for the approval of the 2020-21 budget. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hope you've had an opportunity to look over the budget that was included in the board material. I did say in the agenda item that that was a tentative budget. The final would be given to you tonight, but actually we really didn't make any further changes to the tentative budget. But now that I say that, the action that you just took will make a slight amendment to the budget. So the next time we meet, we will have an opportunity to make that slight adjustment to the budget. But technically, you'll be approving the budget as it is presented to you right now with that adjustment coming at a later time. This budget has been a challenge unlike any other that I have ever been involved in. The economic times that we're facing right now, we basically took what was last year a $67 million budget, and we've reduced that down to a $61.5 million budget. And if you think about it, at $61.5 million, we have in this budget a $1.7 million contingency to try to protect us from this uncertainty of enrollment. So if you backed out that contingency, we've actually gotten this budget down to under $60 million, which is amazing. And I want to thank all of my colleagues across the institution for all the hard work that's been done to put this budget together. It is truly bare bones. I mean, we have tried to strike everything possible that we can. I know there are some issues still remaining regarding personnel and positions, and honestly, we are waiting to see where our fall enrollment comes in. If we have a surge in these last couple of weeks, that could make a difference financially as we move into this new budget. If we were to move forward with a 20% reduction in enrollment, we feel certain that there would be additional steps that are going to be needed in terms of personnel in order to make further adjustments to this budget.
And Dr. Miller, I'm sorry. I think it's very, very important for the board to understand this. This is a streamlined, raw budget that we hope that enrollment will come up even second 8 weeks of the fall and into the spring, in which we would be able to do an amended budget because revenues would be coming back in at a healthier rate than what we were expecting in the fall. But I feel it's ethically our responsibility to let you know that the budget you see today, combined with possible conversations about possible state cuts and appropriations, we cannot maintain our current employee base without an enrollment that comes in healthy over the next fall semester. Now, that could be a combination of 8-week terms and 16-week terms, and our staff are doing, yeoman's work, working hard at this. My concern is that we want to make sure our budget is still going to fulfill the basic mission of the college, and we've done quite a chop to it, and we believe it's healthy, but we also know that any kind of change in the environment, any further COVID effects, any kind of states cuts from the state will affect the bottom line of this budget as well. So, I think there's going to be a lot more conversation in the fall about budget as we go along than you're accustomed to, perhaps as a board, just getting your monthly reports when revenue was extremely high and enrollment was 3,000 more than we see today. I just feel like we need to share that with you, and I don't think Dr. Miller is the full burden to have to do that by himself here. But it's a good budget. We're comfortable with it, but I need the board to understand these are tough days for all of our community colleges in the state.
Does anyone have any specific questions? Okay. Chairman, I believe you're muted.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will need a motion to approve the budget as presented.
I'll make that motion to approve the 2021 operating budget.
And we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, was that Mr. Grime as the second? Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Morris and a second by Mr. Grime. We'll go ahead and call additional discussion. Sorry. And we'll call for the vote. Mr. Grime?
Aye.
Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Ms. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Hayen?
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is an aye. Ms. Sullivan?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the setting the date for the chancellor's evaluation and boards of Regents self-evaluation. We'd like to establish a time that everyone could be present. Yes.
Madam Chairman, we need you to consider the proposing of the ad valorem tax rate.
Oh, sorry, missed
That's
it.
okay. You can evaluate me if you'd like to, but we really need a tax rate determined.
That's probably more important, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So back up one.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thanks. Consider the ad valorem tax rate for the 2021 year. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Some of you may have noticed, but this process has changed. The last time the legislature met, they made some interesting changes to the rules as far as setting your tax rate goes. So we're doing things a little different tonight. Every August that I've been a CFO, at the August meeting, we have passed the budget and we have passed the tax rate. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that anymore. And tonight, we are not going to pass the actual tax rate. What we are asking for you to do is to propose a tax rate. And the way the process goes now is that we have to have a recorded vote where the board proposes a tax rate, and then at your next meeting, that tax rate will be voted on. And then we can put notice in the paper that if it's the September official board meeting, then there'll be a notice put in the paper in advance of that meeting that the tax rate is being voted on at the September meeting. So as far as the numbers go, basically what used to be the effective tax rate and the rollback tax rate were the two big numbers we always look at. Well, we do that still, but they have new names. Now it's called the no new tax rate, and it's called the voter approval rate. But those of you that have been around for a while, it's really, the calculation hasn't changed. It's the effective rate and the rollback rate. And what we have is an effective rate or a no new tax rate of 0.097814 cents per 100 valuation. That's a reduction from the 10.13 cents where we are right now. So it gets, as Dr. Wallace was telling me a few years ago when the last bond was passed, I believe the rate was 14 cents. And now we're dropping that rate under 10. But that is the no new tax rate. the maximum we could go up without having to have public hearings or run the risk of an actual voter referendum would be the rate of 10.4042. And we are not proposing that. That if we were to go up at that rate, it would generate approximately a little over $200,000. But in today's economic climate and all the things that are going on in our economy, it's the administration's recommendation that we took to the Finance Committee, and we're also bringing to you. Our recommendation is to move forward with the no new tax rate of 0.097814 cents per hundred.
So Dr. Miller, am I understanding correctly that we'll need a motion to approve the proposal of the rate?
That's right, because the notice we have to put in the paper before the next meeting actually has to have a roll call vote of who voted yes, who voted no, and who was absent from the meeting. So I'm glad you're already doing that with all the votes today, but we actually have to have a recorded vote for that notice.
All right, so we'll need a motion for the proposing of the tax rate as presented.
Move that the board propose an ad valorem tax rate for 2021 of 0.097814.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Do I have a second? Ms. Morris, did you second that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the roll for the vote. Mr. Graham,
Aye.
Mr. Ott,
Aye.
Ms. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Hand,
Aye.
Ms. Metzler is aye, Ms. Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Now we can set that date for the chancellor's evaluation and board evaluation.
Now you can evaluate me. Perfect.
So if everyone could please look at their calendar quickly, and then we're going to go back to Debbie and get her report in just a second. We would like to do that probably sometime next week. Is anyone out of town the week of the 24th to the 28th?
I can't do it on Thursday with a church meeting.
Okay, can't do it on Thursday, the 27th. Okay, what about and how are we going to do this? Are we going to have to, can we come together and social distance?
Yes, we can, because you're under the CDC regulation numbers, as long as, and because it goes into executive session, you can.
Okay.
And if you come out and make a formal statement through Sandy, if you wanted to make that statement formal, we do have a bit more flexibility to do that. So if you are, though, Madam Chairman, considering an evening, a face-to-face meeting, I'm assuming that would probably need to be 5:30 on an evening for everyone to make that. I don't know if that's true, but, and I'm.
Monday, the 24th at 5:30 work for everyone?
Yes.
Everybody shaking their head or saying yes?
I'm good.
So Monday, the 24th at 5:30. At the boardroom?
Yes, the boardroom is set up for distance where we're all up top, so we can make the boardroom work.
Okay, that's where we'll meet then.
And it gives Sandy plenty of time to post that public notice for that.
Right. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and go back up and catch Debbie and ask her for her external affairs year in review report. Debbie. Uh-oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Each of you got a copy of our year in review. I won't spend a lot of time, but I do want to highlight some of our accomplishments. You know, this year has been a very interesting and challenging year. However, thanks to our donors and our supporters, I can honestly say we've still met all of our matrix, and that we're very excited about the year that we're coming to a close in external affairs. I know some of you, Dylan, you're new to the board. Just to kind of give you a quick overview of the departments within external affairs, we've got the NCTC Foundation, Grant Development and Management, the Development Office and Alumni Affairs, Marketing and Public Relations, and Small Business Development. So I'm going to move first to the foundation. And as you know, Brian Manhart is the new executive director of the foundation. He works with Kim Carroll, our scholarship coordinator, and Diane White and Karen Ruse in our accounting department. And they've done a great job to really, Dr. Miller shared some of the information about the COVID funds and the CARES Act, but this team really worked hard to help us distribute those funds to our students. Also, because of generous donations we received from our donors, we also were able to help from a foundation perspective. 439 students received emergency aid valued at over $110,000 since March of 2020. And that was specifically helping those students deal with the ability to stay in classes, but also with the COVID. Many of them lost their jobs and that kind of thing. And so we were able to help them. As Dr. Miller mentioned earlier, through the financial aid office and the business office, almost 3,000 students were awarded that $1.9 million from the CARES Act. So what a big impact that it had for our students to help them stay in school. Also in the report, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can see we've had some great long-term supporters. Dr. Pat Ledbetter, for instance, gave additional funding to help the Bill Ledbetter Scholarship. Maurice Robeson, who is a past employee of NCTC, her and her family have established the Robeson Family Promise Fund. We're really excited to have her continued support. And then also we received $100,000 from an anonymous donor to honor a teacher from Gainesville and Callisburg, Eva Followill, and established an endowed scholarship there. The Jan Parson Estate, we received an additional $300,000 to support the scholarships that she works with us on. And then also a Graham Foundation Board member established a scholarship in honor of his mother-in-law, June Littlepage. And so those are just a few of the donors that I want to spotlight in this report. In the report, you're going to see lots of information from our students and how these foundation funds have impacted them. I'm not going to take the time today, but if you had a chance to look at that, you'll not only see those that we spotlighted, but also a lot of thank you notes that were included from our scholarship and emergency fund recipients. Looking at our 5-year giving history, we've had 2,279 donors. An average gift that we've gotten is 2,819. And in the last 5 years, we received $6.4 million in donations. And in alumni giving, it was over $466,000 that we got from our alumni. So excited to share those numbers. Also, as you know, we do the employee giving campaign. This year, it was totally online, and people were really stressed with COVID, but so proud to announce that 56% of our full-time employees still participated in our campaign, and we generated over $56,000 in support of scholarships and emergency funds. And that's just, I think, a real testament of our faculty and staff and how they support our students and want to help our students do better. So that's the foundation report. Looking at development and alumni outreach, kudos to Doug Milbauer, who has been our director of development. I will share that he is leaving the college as of this week, but he's done a great job to really put the foundation in place for our development office. Works really hard on our database. Proud to say that we have 162,000 alumni that we feel pretty good about their addresses and their contact information, and that we have taken 75,000 of those in our database and run some different scans and things so that we can help identify what the best possibility for some additional donors that we can have through our alumni association. Michelle Harvey has worked really hard to reintroduce our alumni association. We have 1,000% increase in our membership, and that is due to their work with marketing and expanding our outreach from a website, from doing lots of targeted social media campaigns, as well as email campaigns. So excited to see where that's going to go, and be looking forward to sharing more information with you, the board, next year on how we've expanded our alumni outreach. Grant development and management, excited to say, through the leadership of Donna Updegrove and Jessica Morton as our new grant writer, and Letitia Hendricks' work as our technical specialist, we cannot do grants without all departments being involved. And so you hear the story, it takes a village. Well, it takes a whole college to be successful in grants. And so our faculty and staff are very supportive of what we do in this program. But this past year, they wrote 13 grant proposals, and we received funding for 7 of those, valued at $844,000. But as of last week, we can say 8 of those, because we did receive the TRIO grant funding, and that will be over a 5-year period for $1.4 million. So very excited about what grants is doing. Dr. Wallace already mentioned the comprehensive local needs assessment. I have to give kudos to Donna Updegrove and that team of all the things that were done. We met with stakeholders throughout our service area, both business, ISDs, workforce agencies, community organizations, to really hear what we're doing and what we need to be doing from a workforce perspective. And just so you know, they're working right now to develop the annual Perkins annual application. And so we're taking that information we gained from the CNLA and putting together our plan of action for this upcoming year. And we'll be doing that for the next 5 years so that we can see actual action steps happening from those CNLA meetings. So kudos to that team for their work on that. Marketing and public relations, Ski Sullivan is our director of marketing. We're very excited about the revisions of some things that we're doing both in print media as well as social media. As y'all know, Diane Walderscheit, Demi Beyer are very involved in our graphic design. Elizabeth is our great news writer and does a lot of our video work that we do here at the college. And then Jessica Russell is new to the team, but she is our media buyer. And then Shannon is our webmaster and does a great job with our webpage. So excited about what's happening with marketing and public relations. And then the last department is Small Business Development Center. Lori Logan is our new director. We have a new location. When we closed out of Pinnell, we moved the SBDC to the First United Bank there in Denton. And we've added some additional senior business advisors to that team. And so excited to announce that we've met all our goals this year. Business starts, it's 123%, and they had 27 new businesses that they helped to start. New jobs created was 168% past their goal. They had 201 new jobs. And then this is a great number to talk about capital infusion. We're 147% over our goal because they brought in and helped businesses with $14 million to expand their business opportunities. With the COVID situation, SBDC has stepped in to help lots of small businesses. Actually, they helped 144 small businesses since March and received about $3 million of the CARES Act funds to help those businesses stay in place. And so I would like to end my report basically by thanking the Board of Regents for all their support of the foundation and external affairs, and also Dr. Wallace and really all faculty and staff, because it definitely takes everyone working together to make those kind of things happen. So appreciate y'all's support of the foundation and external affairs. Any questions? I talked really fast because I knew y'all wanted to be on.
I would say this. One of the things that I think is going to be important in our next legislative session is with our small business development centers. Right now, those are funded on a every legislative year basis out of Article 3 of the General Appropriations Act. What I think is going to be important is if we can convince the legislature perhaps to move that to Article 7, which is business and economy, because that's where it's working. And I'm so proud of their work. When you look at the capital infusion dollars we're putting into the economy, I think that's going to be an important avenue for a lot of our small businesses in our communities as we try to recoup and rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. So you'll be hearing more of that probably from me in the next few months as we move into some conversations about that in the future. But I think that'll help that. But Debbie does great work. Her team is phenomenal. I can't believe that the foundation has assets now in the $12 million range when you consider how much it's grown in the last 4, 5, 6 years has been phenomenal. So good for them.
Thank you for that report. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we're down to the next to last item, the executive session, and we do not have one this evening. Thank goodness. This is not as easy as it looks, just so everybody knows. But anyway, so the last item would be adjournment. So do I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move we adjourn.
Mr. Hand moved to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Aye. Take second that motion.
Dylan second. Mr. Ott seconded the motion. Do I need to call the roll, Sandy?
No, aye.
Okay, I think we're good. Everybody said aye. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Good night, y'all.
Night.
Slide.